Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Barno, a mental performance coach with Blue Green Training. Today we're going to discuss heart rate variability, or HRV, which is a metric we can use to determine how our body is managing mental and physical stress. Bottom line, higher HRV is associated with resilience and a metric you should consider using to monitor your performance, your recovery, and your health. So I want to start discussing the autonomic nervous system. It controls processes in your body, which includes breathing rates, digestion, blood pressure, body temperature, hormone functioning, and the list goes on. It is broken up into two parts: the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. I use an analogy of a car having the gas pedal and the brake pedal to describe these two systems. When we are on the gas in our car, we are engaging the sympathetic nervous system, also known as the fight or flight response. So, imagine you are running for a survival-based reason. The fight or flight system is engaged, breathing and heart rates will increase because you're running. Digestion slows because this is definitely not a priority. Our hands get cold because the blood needs to go to the essential muscle groups for running away. Our pupils dilate to take in light so we can see more effectively. And different stress-related hormones are activated to energize you in this situation. Now, on the flip side, the parasympathetic nervous system is the brake in the car. This is rest and digest. You might picture someone after a long day resting on the couch, eating some food. They are digesting their food and taking in the nourishment. They are relaxing their body, so their heart rate is slowing. They don't need to be breathing as much, so their breath rate slows. And ultimately, this system helps us recover. We want our nervous system to be balanced. When we need to go, we go. We're using the gas in the car, but also we can slow down when we need to slow down, which is the brake in the car. The biggest problem is that people are really good at activating the sympathetic nervous system or the gas in the car, but if we are on the gas all the time, we either run out of gas or we crash our car. If you are unable to activate the brake in your car, the parasympathetic nervous system, you have an imbalanced nervous system. What does it look like to always be using the gas in your car all the time? I want you to picture this balance scale. You have the obvious ones: physical stress or training, alcohol and substances, lack of sleep, poor nutrition, pain, our emotions, sickness, general life stressors. If we're on the gas all the time, our nervous system becomes imbalanced, and other problems can happen, such as poor immune system, illness, injury, and ultimately poor performance. Now, this is where we can get into HRV. We can measure the processes that the nervous system regulates in our body to see if it is well balanced, and one of those things is the heart. The autonomic nervous system, for example, regulates your heart. So by measuring the changes in your heart, we are monitoring changes to your nervous system. The next thing to discuss is, what is HRV? This is an EKG recording. You probably had one done at one point or another in your career as part of the physical. They put electrodes on your chest. Traditionally, when we discuss EKGs, you might think heart health, and this is why you had this physical with the military. The doctors want to see how your heart is doing. They look for specific patterns. That could be a dysfunction of the heart. HRV is a measure of the elapsed time in between heartbeats on these EKG recordings. The shorter the time between heartbeats, the faster your heart rate. The longer the time between heartbeats, the slower your heart rate. This should be constantly changing. A healthy heart is able to amp up when it needs to amp up, so smaller differences between heartbeats, and is able to calm down when it needs to calm down, longer distances between heartbeats. This is the gas and the brake in the car that I was discussing earlier. That is a well-balanced nervous system. If we have an imbalance in our nervous system, then we're going to see a lack of variations between each heartbeats. Why is this important? Well, High HRV is correlated with a good health and well-being. You have a happy heart, and now they're using it to assess physical and mental performance. Higher heart rate variability in performance is associated with improved vision and motor learning, focus and concentration, regeneration and recovery from injury, managing and regulating emotions, impulsivity, regulation of our fight or flight response in our brain, memory retrieval, working memory, goal-directed behavior, and adaptability. Everything that is associated with resilience, these things that I just listed, increase the likelihood of success as you go through challenges of life. Low HRV in general is associated with everything opposite of that. So not being able to stay focused, not recovering as easy from an injury, overtraining, poor regulation of emotions, poor working memory, chronic pain, anxiety, depression, etc. Now, these are some personal examples. I have been using HRV daily for nearly 2 years now. And yes, I am not a competing athlete anymore, but I use HRV to monitor when I prioritize recovery over my physical training and using it as an awareness tool to be making changes when I'm stressed. So for example, if I get really poor sleep because I'm doing all these busy things, X, Y, and Z, I will have typically a lower HRV score. I find myself getting more irritable and I'm not as productive, so I prioritize a more restful sleep. I do not drink alcohol very often, but when I do, my HRV is significantly reduced. So I do not train the day after I have a few drinks because I would be more susceptible to injury. The HRV tool I used was actually able to predict 4 out of the 5 colds I've had in the last 2 years before I had any signs of these colds yet. It noticed my nervous system was off kilter. And the last thing is I went through a traumatic event a few years ago. I was told I would have PTSD. Now, individuals who go through something traumatic will often have a very dysregulated nervous system. So I was using HRV as a measurement tool, and then I did things to re-regulate my nervous system back, to bounce back, and to make my nervous system more resilient after this event. I was not diagnosed with PTSD, and being able to regulate my nervous system, I believe, was crucial to preventing this from happening. The next thing I want to do is actually provide some of the research that they are doing on HRV associated with the military. So I'm going to provide you some summaries of some things that I have recently found in research databases. Number one, HRV is shown to be a physiological predictor of post-deployment PTSD symptom severity. So the higher the HRV, the more resilient your nervous system is to the physical and mental stress that you might get on deployment. Number two, lower HRV was associated with lower situational awareness and impaired decision-making performance in marksmanship and navigation tasks. They also talk in this study that if we have stressors, which stressors are normal, you can't avoid them, but if they are bigger stressors, it takes longer for our HRV to recover. And this can become a problem because if you are letting these stressors build up and you're not taking care of yourself and not prioritizing recovery from these stressors, then you're going to have an imbalanced scale, which could lead to chronic stress related problems. Number three, there's associations that have been found between HRV and depression, kind of like what I said before, anxiety disorders, alcohol use disorders, traumatic brain injuries, work stress, sleep disorders, and both cognitive and combat performance. Supporting these observations in studies of resilience, they have found that higher HRV is more associated with that resilience piece and recovery from acute stressors. So that means that those small stressors that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. Next one, soldiers and Navy personnel with greater HRV, both at rest and under stress, exhibited better performance in decision making and cognitive abilities. And then the last one, pretty quickly, the results showed that greater HRV was associated with better performance on executive function tasks. The next thing that you might be wondering is what devices can you use to measure HRV? There are a lot of devices that say they measure HRV, but just because they measure HRV, it does not mean they are accurate. First, I'm going to discuss smartwatches or Garmin's. I do not recommend these, unfortunately, because they have poor accuracy. In this study, Garmin had the poorest accuracy compared to 6 other devices, and Whoop, another popular device, had the best accuracy. If you're going to choose a device, I recommend Whoop, Aura, which is what I use, or a Polar H10 strap. Which one is best? It's honestly kind of hard to say. I've read dozens of studies, and one study will say that Aura is best, one will say Whoop is the best. I prefer Aura because it is more accurate in assessing finger temperature, which is also a way of assessing nervous system regulation. But a lot of individuals do not like wearing rings, especially when they're working out. I've been told that the dive program for recent Special Forces graduates at Fort Bragg is issuing smart rings for guys as they prep and attend CDQC. And I know of several other military based programs who have issued Aura rings over Whoop. An option that I often recommend is buying a Polar H10 strap and syncing it to an app called Elite HRV. Whoop and Aura continuously measures HRV through your sleep to give you an HRV score in the morning. Polar H10 does not do that. You have to wake up right in the morning before you have your coffee and measure your HRV score. We want to do it right when you wake up because this is at the end of your recovery period or sleep. HRV naturally declines throughout the day because of these natural stressors that we encounter. So that's why we want to do it right when we get up. What HRV score should I be looking for? HRV can be very individualized, but first I would like to see if the individual is getting over scores of 30. We should aim above 30 overall. My baseline is actually 30. When I'm getting HRV scores above 30, then my nervous system is primed for resilience, and typically I find myself being more productive, happier, and doing well overall. If it's below 30, then I might consider spending more time recovering, using stress management techniques, or changing some habits in my life that could be throwing my system off balance. My husband, on the other hand, has an HRV baseline score around 90. And same thing goes for him. If he is above that number, he's doing great. If he is below that number, then he needs to make some changes or prioritize other stress management techniques. So you should be recording it consistently to find your baseline and then finding what is helping me increase the HRV and what is decreasing my HRV. To recap what I was mentioning earlier, the most common areas that I see affecting individuals' HRV is poor sleep quality, poor nutrition, not taking care of our physical fitness, using alcohol and other substances, and not managing emotional and mental stress well. If you take care of these key areas, I guarantee you will increase your HRV, strengthen your autonomic nervous system, and ultimately increase your resilience. If you have any question, feel free to comment and we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can.